Hey guys, this is a continuation of why I believe Hugh Jackman was actually natural for all of the Wolverine movies, and I commented a bunch on part 1 related to things that Greg Doucette said, more place, more dates, and more. Check that video out, linked in the description below.
Do you really think that Hugh Jackman is 100% natural?
Oh, absolutely.
Hugh Jackman was not 100% natural for his roles as the Wolverine.
Anyway, on part 2, we're going to focus more on the diet and training and why I believe this routine was actually responsible for Hugh Jackman building that body in the Wolverine movies and how he evolved that physique. And building that physique all natural, mind you. And when I say all natural, I'm not talking about TRT, I'm not talking about SARM, steroids, growth hormone, none of that stuff. By the way, I'm pretty sure he at least had natural healthy levels of testosterone. You guys should get that checked. Only cost you $1. Check out my link linked in the description below. Get tested, see where you're at. If you're low, there are natural things you can do. But you guys should get checked. It's only going to cost you $1 because you need at least adequate normal testosterone levels if you want to feel good and get good performance in the gym. Anyway, let's get to it.
The way you want to look is 70% determined by your diet and only 30% by your training. Now you've got to train hard. But if you don't eat right, none of it matters.
Very true. Everybody says abs are built in the kitchen. They're made in the kitchen. That is true. Never discount the hard work. You need the work. But without the diet, you got nothing unless you want to be what I looked like when I was 245, which I call fat buff. Like, just eat everything, right? Eat ice cream, eat whole milk, eat fattiest steaks you could find. I mean, try to limit sugars still because you don't want to lose your teeth and get diabetes. But basically, just a lot of excess and workout and you'll grow, man. It may not be ideal mass. But the reason I did that back in the day was because I just wanted to get as big as possible. And I guess they call that the dirty bulk, right? I think that's what they call it these days. But I did that back in the day, reading the bodybuilding magazines. These bodybuilders would go, quote, off season and get all their size. Now, obviously, I didn't take the drugs like they did, but I definitely had the diet like they did. And that stuff works, man. But you do start to look a little sloppier, not nearly as impressive, but you will definitely put on size. A lot of that will be muscle if you're lifting heavy. You will definitely put on strength. The hard thing is stripping all that fat off while retaining your size, because again, anybody could just get big, anybody could just get ripped, but can you get very lean while maintaining that muscle mass? That's when things get interesting, and that's what everybody wants though, man, because it is impressive, because that is what's really hard to achieve.
I always believe in starting the day with a little bit of protein. I think if you just go straight in for like the breakfast tour, just carb it up at the beginning, immediately you spike your insulin levels, and then you're fighting it all day.
That's another interesting thing about protein, by the way. It has a thermogenic effect. So not only does it build muscle, but if you overly eat protein, your calories come from that. Well, you got to think about how your body handles the calories, how it basically burns carbs, fats, and protein. So with protein, let's say hypothetically we ate 4,000 calories a day. If the majority of them are protein compared to carbs or fat, you are not going to get nearly as fat. It's not the same as if you ate the majority of 4,000 calories of carbs or even fats. It's actually different. You guys got to look at the thermogenic effect of protein.
At the beginning of the day, you just get some egg whites, a little bit of chicken, some spinach. Just start clean at the beginning of the day. It makes a huge difference.
That's the breakfast of champions, man. It's true what you were told in elementary school back in the day. You are what you eat, like totally, man. If you question that, look, write down everything you eat for a day, and then a week, and then a month, and you will realize it's a reflection on what you look like.
5 days a week, for 1 hour a day, I'm going to go and I'm going to train hard. I'm going to do something.
Okay, so in that clip, Hugh Jackman is talking about more what he does just in general, even outside of the movies, which is great. Everybody needs to get their body moving. 1 hour of activity a day, or at least 5 days a week, is highly recommended. Use it or lose it. Get moving, guys. Get to the gym or go for a jog. Do something, man. But his workout for the Wolverine from 2013, you could find that workout online and it's posted. He was working closer to 3 hours a day. Of course, he talks about the diet 70%, the training's 30%. We all know how important the diet is. And I will fully cover that entire workout in a future video if you want. Comment below if you want to see that. But I'll just give you a sample of it that's posted online and give you some quick thoughts about one of the workout days, right? So he starts off lifting for an hour in the morning, then does cardio after that, both on an empty stomach, and then later in the evening, he'll do another hour of cardio. But let's go over a sample workout. So on Monday, chest and shoulders. Bench press, 4 sets, 5 reps, 150-second rest. Dumbbell shoulder press, 4 sets, 10 reps, 60-second rest. So you can see he's moving at a pretty good tempo if he's only resting like 60 seconds or even 30 seconds on some of these. So obviously it makes sense he would rest longer on his bench press because he's only doing 5 reps. A lot of these other movements he's doing anywhere between 8 and 12. So yeah, less rest, that's fine. It makes sense. So dumbbell shoulder press, 4 sets of 10. Behind the neck press, 4 sets of 10. Behind the neck press, I actually recommend that, but you got to make sure your shoulders are healthy. It's not for everybody. So obviously start very light, maybe even with a broomstick. But the reason I like the behind the neck stuff, it does, at least what I've noticed, add that extra contraction either on the shoulder press or lat pull down. And the reason why that's perfect for Wolverine is to maximize definition. Call it bro science if you want. I call it anecdotal evidence. I've noticed this myself. I noticed this in my brother. Behind the neck work actually does add that extra layer of separation and definition. But be careful with it. It's not for everybody. You got to make sure you have healthy shoulders. So like I said, go very light to start. Make sure you have the mobility. And then what else does he do? He does Cuban presses. He does dips, tricep pushdowns, lat raises, front raises, rear shoulder flies, and overhead presses. So nothing crazy. A lot of basic compound movements, and then obviously he's doing more isolation work when you're talking about like the tricep pushdowns, for example. But here's the key. He does a lot of supersets. So for example, superset number 1, he'll do dips and tricep pushdowns. Again, like I mentioned earlier, very similar to a lot of my own workouts. I do a ton of supersets. So look at these other supersets. He does side laterals with front raises. He does rear shoulder flies with overhead press. So when you're doing supersets, it's very easy to go to failure, especially on the second part, the second set, the superset, right? And I've always noticed, again, call it bro science if you want. Maybe there's real science out there. I found it anecdotally that if I'd actually train to failure, I will look harder. That's just like a thing I've noticed from nearly 30 years of training. So again, Wolverine looks the way he does because a lot of it is the way that he trains, doing these supersets, doing this behind the neck work, and then basically going to failure. It all makes sense to me.
His workout it's basically a to failure style of workout. He would always go to failure. He would always train to try to get the muscle to hypertrophy. And that was the way his trainer set up all his routines, was to have him train to failure. So that was basically his routine.
One of the really underrated things about training is it's really impossible for long periods of time to keep pushing yourself.
That is very true. In fact, it's actually very smart, which I don't even do this part myself that often, to take a deload week every, say, 3 months or something, where it's not like you're not doing anything, but you're really backing off on the intensity and the volume. And I need to actually take that advice too, because it's easier to run yourself into the ground, especially when you're doing all these supersets and you're doing all these, like with me, a lot of martial art drills on top of the weightlifting. So it's very easy to burn yourself out. You gotta make sure you get enough sleep. That obviously aids in your recovery. There's some other great things you do for your recovery. Natural things, of course, related to diet, supplementation. I'll even do Epsom salt baths. All that stuff helps, but it is easy to run yourself into the ground when you're training hours a day and you're doing supersets and everything else. When he trained for the Wolverine, by the way, the 2013 film, he actually trained for 6 months with his trainer, David Kingsbury. So I don't know how many deload weeks he took during that, if any, but I'm sure he pretty much ran himself into the ground. And again, 6 months for the transformation, so it's not like he had 6 weeks. You do a lot in 6 months. Going to me, using an example, I'm in relatively good shape, but I need about a month to get into peak condition. So I could imagine if I quit lifting for a while, just took time off, I could probably look amazing in 6 months because you get the muscle memory plus I already know what I'm doing. So I don't know at what state he would have started prior to the 6 months of training for the Wolverine, but he could have got back all that he did in the other Wolverine movies from that muscle memory, put on that size, and just really start sharpening himself. So having 6 months to prepare for that just adds more credibility to that. Yeah, sure, he could definitely do that naturally. All right, let's see what Nick Strength and Power thinks.
And he said to this day that he did it without steroids, and I 100% believe him, so I want to say that up front.
So obviously I agree with Nick. The funny thing is what we have in common is we're both natural. So obviously we've been able to build some decent physiques naturally, so we're going to give Hugh Jackman the benefit of the doubt. Whereas Greg Doucette and Derek from More Place, More Dates are not natural, so they just, everybody's taking stuff, kind of more that attitude.
Apparently I'm an idiot too.
Now, to give Greg credit, he actually did build a very nice physique naturally back in the day before he started getting on stuff. As far as More Place, More Dates, I don't know what he did naturally. I'm assuming he probably started off naturally. I would hope for at least a few years so he knows what's possible, right? Obviously, those guys are both not natural. Whereas Nick, for different reasons, I think he might even have heart issues he talked about on some of his videos. That's why he stayed natural. Like for me, it's just, I felt like I could build a good enough physique where like I didn't need to use that stuff, so I really don't want to. So everybody's got their own reason whether they want to be natural or not. Anyway, you know, if people take stuff, that's on them, man. They got their own reasons. They can do whatever they want. I'm just sharing me specifically and my choice.
Hugh Jackman is 6'2", and his body weight when he played Wolverine was 190 pounds. So that's really not a crazy body weight at all. If you look at him, he's really more lean than anything. He really doesn't have that much muscle mass.
So it's not so much the size thing, as been mentioned, it's really that conditioning, because most people will never get in that kind of shape. And staying that lean year-round, by the way, wouldn't even be healthy anyway, whether you're natural or not. So Hugh Jackman obviously worked his butt off through the course of these films and actually started getting a better physique as he got older, which I don't think is that crazy. In fact, I think it's more likely that would have happened. What do you guys think? Was he all natural? Let me know in the comments below.